I'm Bill Bott. This is Ken Miller. If you didn't know, his face is on the book. Mine is not. Although when Widgets was first being written, I had just taken a job. Ken had left state government. We worked in state government together for several years, and Ken had left to start a company. My wife was about to have our second child, and which one? One of them. And I didn't think now was a time to follow Ken on his great adventure. And plus, I had an opportunity to stay at the state and work in the Chief Information Officer's office. So I was really excited about that. So I stayed behind, and I was about 2 weeks into the job. So the romance is gone. Now it's all just the work, and it's a flood of work. And Ken called and said, "Do you want to golf?" And I was like, "Oh God, I'd love to golf." Not that I'm a good golfer, but just wanted to get out of the office. And so when I got down to the lake that morning, Ken handed me a phone book worth of papers and said, "I wrote a book. I need you to read it and tell me your thoughts by the 9th hole because I got to call the editor. It's due today." That's when I read Widgets. I didn't highlight it. My words weren't as kind, mainly because I just wanted to golf and forget about work. But I love the work of government. I love the Widgets book, the message in there. I hate Ken because he can describe these things so much better than I can and communicate them so much better than I can. So when Larissa invited the two of us, we speak across the country, both on the Widgets book and also on the Extreme Makeover book and the other things that we've been doing and talking about. But rarely do we get to sit together and do it. So I'm excited about the opportunity and thank Larissa for that. She said, "Treat this like my kitchen. You all would never fit in my kitchen." My wife would go crazy. I want to think of this more as the office where Ken and I worked at in government, because in our office we did two very smart things. We were under the governor's office, but we had an office that was not anywhere near the governor's office, which was the first smart thing we did.
Absolutely.
The second smart thing we did is we had a conference room with a dartboard. And most of our great conversations about how we were going to fix the state and how we were going to work with government happened around that dartboard. Yep. No adult beverages during the day, at least. But so much around that dartboard. And so as I was thinking about how to introduce this and how to kick it off, I thought, how do we kind of get back to what we talked about when we started with the dartboard? And usually when it was time for a dart break, myself, Ken, the other partner in the company, Blake, we'd all get together, and it usually was a question that started like this, like, what the hell's wrong with government? Why are we so frustrated? What's wrong? And so to kick it off, Ken, I'll just ask you, we're here today looking at it. What the hell's wrong with government?
It sounds like a pithy question, right? And we get it all the time. I live in Florida now, which is as red a state as you can imagine. I don't know if you've been there, but it's a very red state. And so when people find out what I do, they give me all the opinions in the world of what's wrong with government. I mean, it's just immediate. But it's a really important question because everything you do in trying to transform government is based on your answer to that question. How you define what's wrong with government will direct all of your efforts and all of your intentions. And so there is no more fundamental question for you to answer than that one. What is wrong with us? Right? And so I would invite you to do that in your conference room when you go back. Just sit down together and say, what the heck is wrong with us? And see where that leads. Hopefully where it leads.
Do not give your employees darts when you ask that.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully where it leads and why it's such a profound question to ask is because what's more important is what's not wrong with government. Right? Usually when we answer the question, what's wrong with government, we immediately go to you people. Right? You're what's wrong with government. You're too slow, too inefficient, too expensive. You hate customers. You have no accountability whatsoever. You don't understand finances. All this stuff directed at you that you are the problem. And we hear that from the outside. We hear it from the citizenry. We hear it from people who are picking on government. But we also hear it from ourselves inside the organization. But as long as you continue to think the problem with government is you, all of your efforts will be directed in that way, which is they'll be people-oriented. And even if you don't couch them negatively, Bill and I were talking yesterday about this kind of phenomenon of the tyranny of good intentions, right? Which is, even if you don't say, oh, people in government are bad, we still say, the people in government could just get a little better. It's the same thing, right? Whether you say, I think you guys are great, but I just want you to be a little bit better, right? We need to develop you professionally. We need to make sure that you're linked to the strategic goals of the organization. We need to make sure that accountability systems are in place. As soon as we go down that road, we're saying the problem with government is a people problem. And that's going to direct every initiative and every intention that you do. And so you'll spend your time trying to motivate people or incentivize them or hold them accountable or all this stuff, and you'll miss what the real opportunity in government is. Which, my perspective, if you've read the books, you probably know my perspective, which is it's not a people problem. The problems with government tend to be three things, two of which we have no control over that are not our fault, right? The real problem with government is we have no competition, not in the real sense, right? I mean, it's, if you have no competition, your customers have no choice. They're hostage customers with nowhere to go. There's no incentive to get better other than good intentions, your desire to do a great job. And so when people pin me down and say, oh, government's bad, government this or that, I always turn back to them and say, well, how would your organization perform if you had no competition? Right? Competition is that grinding wheel that forces you to always get faster, to get cheaper, to get more innovative, to do more for your customers. It is a universal force, and when it exists, performance improves. When it doesn't exist, performance stagnates. Whether you're talking about track and field, football, organizations, it's competition that forces you to get better. Well, we don't have that, right? So, not our fault. It just is what it is. So now we've got to figure out how do we get better in light of that. The second problem with government that's not our fault, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is dysfunctional work systems. Right? Our systems are a mess. Through no fault of your own, nobody intentionally set out to make your processes the mess that they are. They've evolved that way over time, and we can get into that. And then the third problem, which we do have something to do about, that is our fault and we can fix, is pervasive fear. Right? We live in fear-based cultures that perpetuate, and so there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. But for me, what's wrong with government? It's not the people, right? It's something different. And again, this is why I think it's the most important question. The real issue with government is capacity, not capability. Right? And I always try to confront leaders with that question when they first engage with me. Do you think the problem with your organization is a capability problem? That is, we don't have the right people and they don't know what to do. Or is it a capacity problem, which is there's way more work coming in and we can never get to it all? Right? Which do you have? Right? For most of us, it's the capacity issue. But if you think it's a capability problem, you're going to spend a ton of energy there and miss the real opportunity, which I think you'll hear some great examples from the panel this morning of people who've tackled the capacity issue and how much that frees us up to do so much more good in the world.
So thinking about the lack of competition first, because that's a big one. Mm-hmm. And when you think about industries that are out there that share that with us, the airline industry, there's several airlines, but they all do about the same thing the same way. They're going to put you in a metal tube, strap you down, get you from A to B, mm-hmm. and they all do the same thing. And they treat most of us who travel a lot, understand we get treated a lot more like cattle every day than, I think Southwest is just a basket with a chicken in it away from a bus in a third world country. It's getting very close lately. Cell phone companies, utility companies, all of these where you don't have very firm competition, right. We seem to have really bad customer service and we seem to run these problems. So we're not going to start giving driver's license away at Walmart. We can't go to Sears and house inmates. We can't do, garbage collection isn't going to be done by Chipotle. So how do we create that competition? Or in light of not having it, what do we do? Right.
So again, that view is so important because monopolies, as you point out, all act the same, whether it's public sector or private sector monopoly. The AT&T store looks no different than a DMV office. Right? If you've ever gone in there, same frustration. You leave there, you don't have some birth certificate and proof of ID or something, and you can't change your cell plan, and it's a horrible, awful experience. And you walk out of there going, this feels like the DMV. Well, it's because they have you. You're a hostage for 2 years, and they treat you that way. So it's not whether it's public sector or private sector. Monopolies act like monopolies. They can't help themselves. But our dilemma is, what can we do about that, right? We can't like set up 2 cities and just we'll have our real city government, and we'll have the fake one, and we'll have a competition and see how we.
The winner gets to keep their job.
Yeah,
I think we could do this.
Yeah,
actually.
I suppose.
Reality show. It'll work.
The Hunger Games. Yeah, the Hunger Games of. Yes,
That'll be tricky.
last city standing. But the surrogate for competition is high expectations, right? So we don't have a competitor that keeps pushing us. But one of the things you can do is to act like you had one, right? As a leadership team, you can go back to the organization and say, if we had competition, what would they be competing with us on? If they were running a commercial about how bad we are, what would they be advertising? If they were continually stealing our customers, what would they be stealing it on? Is it price? Is it speed? Is it quality? How would they attack us? And it's a great strategic exercise to have, and then to go off and fix those things, right? So pretend like you did have a customer or a competitor. What would they be doing to you, and fix those things? But in light of that, competition forces you to get better at your operations. Since we don't have that, we have to deliberately get better at our operations, which means we have to get very clear, have very deliberate attempts. Things that come natural to people in a competitive environment, we have to be more deliberate about. That's all it is.
So we're off our notes at this point, so this is more like conversation. Setting a high expectations. Mm-hmm. When we set high expectations, we have this tendency to kind of lean towards, well, if I'm going to set these expectations, now I have to measure them, and I have to hold people accountable to them, right? And so this is my least favorite time of the year, because usually when I drive a lot to the airport, and you know, when we're out, and when I'm driving, I listen to a lot of talk radio. I usually listen to the news or something going on, but this time of year, we're starting to get into that political season, and it seems like everybody running is all about how government is bad, and it just gets to me. So now I find myself listening to Howard Stern, which now gets me in a different mindset altogether. Right. But I can't even listen to it, because the talk about keeping employees accountable, right? And so we want to set high expectations, but how do we keep that from this evil performance appraisals and the drilling into people that they're accountable? I mean, it seems like right now every public official who's running for office, let's separate public servants from people running for office, politicians. Sure. They're like Elmer Fudd, right? They got the hunting thing out, and they're out hunting public servants and see who they can go after. Right. So how do we set high expectations without the accountability that so often can drive really bad things into the work we do?
Well, it's this great paradox, right? You can want great outcomes. And as an organization, you can say, we really want to achieve these things. But the minute you move from wanting it to measuring it and holding somebody accountable for it, you completely destroy it. And it's so, again, it's the tyranny of good intentions. It's such an honorable thing to say, we care about these results. These are very important to us and our citizens. Let's measure them. We'll see how we're doing. Awesome. You've got the measurement, you have the data, it informs you how you're doing. You can start thinking about innovative ways of improving. All that's good. But the minute you move from that to, and oh, by the way, Bill, I need you to get a 4% improvement, it's over. It's over. You are going down the tragic tale that you will see over and over and over again. I was invited a couple months ago. The governor's office in Colorado has been down a similar journey to what a lot of you in Washington are going through. And they have a leadership academy. And they invited me to come in and speak towards the end of their leadership academy. And their whole academy has been about developing measures, developing strategic plans, setting targets, and accountability systems. I said, you understand I'm going to say don't do any of that, right? And they're like, well, no, but let's give it a shot. So in any case, the whole session was started with one question, which is, I just asked the question, the way you achieve results in an organization is to hold people accountable for the achievement of measurable goals. I had that one slide up on the screen. That's all I brought with me. The purpose of the way an organization achieves results is to hold people accountable for the achievement of measurable goals. And I said, what do you guys think of that? And it started off, everybody's like, of course. I mean, that's America. Yeah, absolutely. But the more we digested, the more we talked about it, we're like, well, is that how results really happen? By holding people accountable for what? And it got into a very good dialogue, but my favorite part, I could not have paid this guy to do this. One of the people in the audience was from the Veterans Affairs portion of their government. And as we got to talking about cultures and top-down hierarchical cultures of holding people accountable, he said, wait. He said, you know, I have a military background. I'm in Veterans Affairs. This is how our organizations run. This is works. This absolutely works. And I said, you're from Veterans Affairs? He said, yeah. So is there any example? Yeah. Are there any examples of accountability gone amok in VA in, let's say, I don't know, the last year and a half or so? Right? Which I felt bad for the guy because the whole crowd just turned on him. But what a brilliant example of what happens. Again, VA wanted patients treated in a timely manner. It's a great intention. Of course you want to treat people in a timely manner. But as soon as they went from that to, you're going to be held accountable for the following wait times, right? Well, what did the hospitals do? They came back and said, well, yeah, but we can't meet those wait times. We need to fix the process. We need to add more resources. We have to do something different. And they said, well, no, but you're still accountable for the result. And when you are held accountable for a result that is out of your control, what options do you have left? Right? So people game the system. We saw it with all the school districts. Right? The standardized testing, if you kept track with what happened in DC, right? The miracle 40% increase in student achievement in DC, that was amazing. They cheated. Right? I mean, the answer that was on the cover of all the magazines was the brilliant superintendent, the smartest person that ever lived, came up with a scheme where if the scores went up, the principals and teachers got a bonus, and if they went down, they got fired. Perfect, right? High stakes. And sure enough, the scores went way up. These are good people. Teachers, principals, there are no better people. Forced to take actions out of their character, out of their esteem, because of an accountability system. See, the problem with the accountability movement is the belief that the only variable that matters is effort. Right? That you folks you aren't trying hard enough. And so if we give you a measure and a number and a target, now you will try harder. But if you look at the school system, are there any other variables that affect student achievement besides how hard the teacher's trying? Hundreds, thousands. And if I'm the fourth grade teacher, I'm at least going to say, well, I can only do what I can do with what the third grade teacher gave me, right? I mean, there's a whole line of, but no, it's just you. You are accountable. You must raise their scores. It's ridiculous. So again, without fixing systems, without changing the way the work is done, all these other things at best are a waste of time, but what they really end up being is toxic, and they're perpetuating cultures of fear. So we just, even though it's good intentions, we just keep increasing the fear level in all of our organizations.
Yeah. They're the demotivators that rob us of our intrinsic desire to do better in government.
Absolutely.
Type thing. So
absolutely.
That all kind of pulls in. Not only do we need to set high expectations because we don't have competition, but we have to get rid of the demotivators. And oftentimes those demotivators are your 300, the 10 days you spend a year doing 360 performance evaluations, right. Your accountability measures, your pay for performance type stuff that ends up being the in-office fights. Can't right. believe she got a perfect score again. She's always on Match.com. She doesn't even work. all of those discussions that rob us of what we're actually here to do, which is all that noble stuff the government wants to get done.
Well, if you would just put half of that energy that we spend being accountable for work and tracking work and reporting on work to actually doing the work or fixing the work, you'd be amazed how much more capacity you have.
Get back to the capacity problem.
Capacity, right? I mean, the studies show less than 50% of the time that people are at work are they doing what they were hired to do. Now, some of it is on Match.com, but most of it, if you study it, it is tracking the work, reporting on the work, going to meetings to be accountable for the work. It's all of the stuff we've created to help, right, that just keeps robbing more and more of our time away. So I know it's a hard line, and again, it's a paradox. It's okay to want good outcomes, and it's okay to measure outcomes and to use that information to help you make decisions. But as soon as you move from wanting it and measuring it for knowledge's sake to trying to hold people accountable, you've crossed the line and you will be in a cycle of where people either have to be afraid, they have to game the system, or down you go.
So we've been touching on several themes that really kind of cover the Widgets book and into the Extreme Makeover book, two books that are on my bookshelf I've never actually read of yours. I'm waiting for the movie. Print is dead. But the whole idea that government does make something for a purpose, for a customer, and it's the way that we do that, it's the systems work. And so and all joking aside, what I really like about the Extreme Makeover book is the analogy of the whole home improvement and the idea that we have to get better at the work of government, because the house, the way we do work, where we live in, and the work that we do is really the limiting factor to getting us. So we have these people with these great hearts who are spending all this time trying to make better people or hold them accountable to things, or all that toxic stuff that we do inside of a house that's all run down. And so we're trying to make the people better, but it's the house that helps build the capacity for them to do great things. And it's 2 chapters in the book you can read, or wait for the movie, like I did. But with that, so translating that to our work, if it's not a people issue, if we can all agree that it's how we do the work that's the issue, then the question is, okay, I agree with that. How do we fix it? How do we get better? Because the common kind of thinking is that once you get to that kind of change, we don't have the time, the money, or the resources to rip down the house and build a new one. Right? Because we still have to be living in it at the same time.
Right. Well, I mean, and I talked about it in the Widgets book, and I tried to reinforce it in the Extreme Makeover book, and I have to keep saying it to folks over and over again. You don't have to fix everything. For some reason, every time we embark on these change initiatives, we try to make everybody do it. So we spend the first year and a half trying to train everybody, so everybody's on board. And then we spend all this energy, and then we try to get a whole bunch of teams going and a whole bunch of things. And we spend all of our time on buy-in, trying to get that, Bob from Public Works to buy into this before we can move on. And he's not coming, ever. He's not.
Bob apparently is sitting over there somewhere. So.
You guys know Bob. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's, and in every county you have that. There's 4 or 5 departments that are really hugely critical to citizen priorities that we have got to manage and improve and fix like crazy. And we've got some ancillary ones that'd be nice if we get to them. And there's a few that if we just pretend that they're, long lost relatives, that for a while it's okay. I mean, but we tend to think we got to get everybody going. And we just spend all this energy on buy-in and getting started. And by the time we finally get started, we've moved on to the next, next shiny object. So the real key is to focus. And what I've found in most agencies I've ever been in, there are 4 or 5 really key processes that if those things ran well, you have covered 80% of that organization's abilities. And so whatever method you use. Now, with the Extreme Makeover book, it came out right before the lean fad started. I can't say fad, lean, whatever.
Philosophy.
Philosophy, there it is, philosophy, right? And we knew it was coming. Because it was big in the private sector, and anything that's big in the private sector is coming to government 10 years later. So you can just see, you know what's coming. So if you haven't started boning up on your startup language and your innovation language yet, start, because you're going to be 6 years ahead of the crowd when it finally hits us. But that's what's coming next, is all the startup language and all the innovation stuff. It's coming. Which, again, it has its value too. All of these things have their value, absolutely have their value in context, which is they are all ways of helping us do systems thinking, right? So whether it's TQM, which we used to joke about, or which is how we got our start, TQM, then re-engineering, and then lean, and then Six Sigma, and all these things, they all have their value, but they're all giving us different tools and techniques for fixing our systems. And so as long as we don't lose sight of the real purpose, which is fixing systems, don't get stuck in the terminology or the fad and stuff. So Extreme Makeover book came out at that time because it was like, okay, I know lean is coming to government, and I know what they're all going to do. Everybody's going to run out and try to train everybody, and there's going to be all this training. It's like, wow, I could spend the rest of my life on the road training every water and sewer district in the United States on lean concepts. No. So the thought was, how do we write a book that makes that what's coming fit in government, right? So I kind of view my role, and you and I both play this role, of how do we communicate things to our family, the family of government, so that it makes sense. And so that's what we were trying to do in Extreme Home Makeovers. How do we make the concepts of lean make sense in our context without using any of the language? Because as soon as you say waste, you just made no friends, right? And maybe you experience this as soon as you
Someone
walk.
must be fired.
Yes, you walk into a conference room and say, "We're going to go over the 7 wastes today." Say, "Waste? Wait, we don't have. You're saying what I do is a waste? We don't have any waste." And then you got to rebuild the trust and get going from there. But it's all about flow. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's about flow. How do we get our customers to flow through our processes in the shortest, fastest route possible? It's such a simple concept, and we can couch it in lots of other things. But at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. So, which processes, which systems, attack them. It's, you know, I don't know. You and I have battled about this forever. It's like, why does this take so long? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you can do a project in
5 days.
5 days. You can turn a whole organization around in 18 months. It doesn't have to be this huge endeavor. If you fix the
18 months is a long time.
It is a long time. It is a long time. But you absolutely can. Absolutely can. So it doesn't have to take forever. And I know there'll be some questions about that. Well, you haven't seen our organization. Yeah, we have. And you can. So, yeah.
Yeah.